I've been answering a lot of questions about vintage clothing, and here's another question. What is vintage clothing? Vintage is technically clothing that is 20 years old at least. I tend to use it if it's 10 years old, you know, it's not recent, it's not this season, you're getting towards vintage. At that point, it's either vintage or just used. When people use the term retro, they're referring to new clothing that has been done in the style of certain vintage clothes, but it is not actually vintage itself. If you're looking for high-end designer clothes from recent seasons, you might end up shopping consignment. Consignment means the original buyer of the piece still owns it, and the store or online seller is just exhibiting it. When the piece sells through that retailer, then the original consignor gets paid. Resale is another possibility for high-end designer clothes. That means it's also recent, but the retailer or online seller has purchased the piece from the original owner and has invested the money in it, and when the piece sells, the money goes to the store. If you're using the term thrift store, that should really apply to an organization that's raising money for a charity, such as Goodwill. There's also cancer associations that are raising money. Housing Works is a good one in New York. It's not for profit. In an earlier video, I spoke about pieces that were new with tags. For instance, this beautiful Nina Ricci dress that I got at my friend Ellen and Susie's, now sadly defunct store, and it has a tag on it for $2,400. I think I got it for about 10% of that price. Still not H&M prices, but considering that this jacket was something I bought from Alan and Susie in 1995, I have high expectations for the dress holding up for a long time. Another type of piece you might find with tags on is called deadstock. That means something that was never sold by the original store. Often retailers get that in large lots, so you might have a store that closed down and it had 100 pairs of shoes or 100 bathing suits, or at least 10 bathing suits, and then you know for sure it's dead stock. It's much more difficult to tell if you find something new with tags in a store such as Ellen and Susie's. If it came from a store and an individual seller, I wouldn't call it dead stock. Personally, I refer to pieces that I have that are 10 years old or older as vintage. I mean, you know, if I'm just talking to you guys, I don't have to be so fussy about it. If I was selling it, maybe I would call it something else. If you have any questions about vintage clothing that I haven't answered, feel free to leave it in the comments below and I'll answer it in a future FAQ. Click the links below for photos of this jacket and the dress I showed you, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my next video.